Imagine starting a new job, counting down to payday, only to find your paycheck is lost in a mess of outdated policies, indifference, and red tape, leaving you stranded, unpaid, and frustrated. Here's how one bank's payroll disaster showed me exactly how not to treat employees. Every company should be assessed based on how it treats its own. In 2021, I found myself taking a job in banking after a month of unemployment. I was in a tough spot financially, needing cash to pay overdue bills. I had left my last position in a state of burnout to safeguard my mental health. And although this new role paid less than I'd hoped, the reality of needing income outweighed any hesitation. The company's response to the pandemic's challenge was, to put it mildly, lacking, especially in terms of training. For an entire month, I essentially observed my computer screen, listening in on calls taken by the person assigned to train me. The screen sharing was poor, often too blurry to follow what the agent was actually doing, and they rarely explained their steps between calls. Watching with no context felt like 30 days of getting paid to absorb nothing. And twice a week, I attended short training classes on specific tasks that required extra focus. And these classes ended up being far more beneficial than the entire on-the-job training they provided. On days without classes, I would sit at my desk unable to follow what the trainer was selecting on screen. In contrast, my previous employer had given me step-by-step guidance before taking calls, so I was well prepared. Here, I didn't even have system access like other new trainees to shadow the calls properly. So I couldn't practice inputting bank numbers or following along. Frustration began to build, and soon I was feeling demotivated before I'd even fully started. 30 days into training, my mental health had deteriorated. I was leaving work upset every night and began missing days to attend interviews for other jobs. Unfortunately, I had no idea how much worse it was going to get, and this frustration soon started to impact my behavior at work. It all started with the first big issue I encountered working at this company. They paid employees on the 1st and 15th of the month, but if either day fell on a weekend, payday was moved to the previous Friday. The company, being a bank, pushed hard for employees to open accounts with them. They made it seem like getting direct deposit that first paycheck would be quick and easy and convenient. But if you didn't open an account with them, you had to settle for a paper check. What they failed to mention was that they would mail the check, claiming they needed to verify your address in the process. Why they needed to do this was beyond me. But once I found out, I reluctantly agreed. Now, most companies that mail checks send them early enough to arrive on or before payday. For me, the first of the month fell on a Sunday, so they paid us that Friday. I'd planned to deposit my paycheck via mobile banking, pay some bills, and treat myself to take out after a long month. But when I got home that Friday, there was no check. Panic set in. My mind raced with the worst case scenarios, asking myself, what if I never get paid? All weekend, I was consumed with anxiety. By Monday morning, I was both angry and anxious. I went straight to the call center manager and told him I hadn't been paid. He casually looked up and said, okay, confused and annoyed. I asked what I should do next. His response, I don't know. Wait to see if it arrives. Not willing to accept that, I called HR directly. I explained the situation, and HR rep told me, you shouldn't have gotten it by now. We didn't mail the checks until 7 p.m. Thursday night. I was furious. Why mail it so late? Most employers want their employees to be paid on time. I voiced my frustration, pointing out that their policy of forcing a paper check was already inconvenient, and they could have at least made sure it was sent sooner. I hung up fuming. The entire day was a blur. I checked out mentally by lunchtime. I was so stressed out that I called my mom to vent. Due to COVID restrictions, I couldn't eat in the break room, so I had to sit at my desk, surrounded by constant noise of phone calls. I was frustrated, defeated, and unsure what to do next. When I got home that evening, I checked the mail again, still no check. By Tuesday, I was determined to get answers. I clocked in and immediately called HR again, demanding tracking information for my check this time. The HR rep told me they didn't place tracking on it and couldn't give me any other information about it. I was beyond frustrated at this point and felt like I was being strung along. Couldn't put gas in my car. I was running out of food and they didn't seem to care. I lashed out, telling them, "This isn't fair. You've gotten my work, but I haven't been paid. I've held up my end of the deal, but you're not holding up yours." I hesitated to cancel the check though, thinking it could be in my mailbox at that very moment. If I canceled it and the check was there, I'd be even more defeated. So I hung up in a state of confusion and sat in silence. Later, I called my mother again, feeling completely broken. "What am I going to do?" I asked. "I need gas. I need food." And they don't care. She told me to hang in there, but it felt like the situation was hopeless. Tuesday dragged on. I rushed home and checked the mail. There was still no check. That night, I hit a low point. My phone service was cut off, my gas tank was empty, and all I had for dinner was a pack of beef ramen noodles. I broke down. Couldn't believe that I still hadn't been paid. No apologies, no help, just more obstacles. I resolved that come Wednesday, I'd either get my check or get fired trying. When Wednesday came, I clocked in immediately and called HR for the third time. This time I demanded my paycheck. I told them I wouldn't continue working until I was paid. I also told my team lead, who had just returned from vacation, about the situation. She said she'd check on it. But her version of checking, sadly, was just calling the call center lead, who gave her a non-answer. It was clear to me no one was taking this seriously, and even more clear to me that nobody even cared. As I worked that day, my frustration only grew. After every call, I got angrier and angrier until I snapped. I called my mom again, venting my frustration. In the middle of the call, my supervisor told me to stop making personal calls and get back to work, which of course I ignored him and told my mom if I don't get paid, they're not going to like what I'm going to do. I now realize that wasn't my smartest move, but my mental health was in a terrible place. Before this job, I'd struggled with dark thoughts and other thoughts that kind of stops everything. And this paycheck situation was pushing me to that edge. By the end of the day, I was so worked up that I couldn't continue. I went home early and without permission, hoping I'd get fired. Wednesday ended without a paycheck again, to nobody's shock, and I was mentally and emotionally drained. Thursday morning, I debated calling in sick, regretting that I'd ever taken this job. When I arrived at work, my keycard didn't work. Thought maybe I'd swiped it too fast and tried again, but it still didn't work. For a brief moment, I actually felt joy. Maybe I had finally been fired and this nightmare was over. But then I heard my name being called as I was walking away. It was my manager asking if I was angry. I told him yes, I'm fucking pissed. I still haven't been paid. So yes, I am pissed. Why shouldn't I be pissed? He asked if I was planning to get violent. I then replied confused, "No, you haven't paid me, but now you're trashing my character." That's when I realized they had listened to the phone call with my mom and taken what I said as a threat. They interrogated me like a criminal, making me feel like the bad guy when all I wanted was my goddamn paycheck. Eventually, they let me back inside and sent me to the manager's office. Everyone was staring at me, and I realized they probably told the entire office about my so-called threat. They explained that they took the phone call as a potential threat to the security of others, and we were going to listen to it again. I didn't see the point, so I told them there's no need. I said what you heard. I had already reported the situation to our wage and hour division, so I told them they should be ashamed of themselves and how they've handled this. If they had just helped me earlier, none of this would have ever happened. My manager insisted on listening to the call anyway. Midway through, I said, you know what? Fuck this. If you're gonna fire me, then fire me. Stop wasting my fucking time. The manager said that they weren't going to fire me, but they had to discipline me for what I said. They wrote me up for using profanity and then gave me 2 more write-ups for the F-bombs I dropped during this meeting. I signed the paperwork saying, well, 3 write-ups usually means termination. So does that mean I'm fired? They told me, no, we're counting this write-up as 1. I kind of just at this point rolled my eyes and went back to work. By lunchtime, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. I cleaned out my desk, logged out of my computer, and handed my ID badge to the team lead. I quit. Fuck this place, I said, walking out. I finally got paid that day, though, 3 p.m., but the damage was done. It took me 6 months to recover from the mental and emotional toll. I won't sugarcoat it. I handled this situation terribly, and I'm incredibly fortunate that they never reported me to local authorities, which could have landed me in some serious legal trouble. This situation would have never escalated if my concerns had been taken seriously, and if I had received the pay I was owed. Hands down, this was the worst job I'd ever had. I never imagined I would have experienced something like this. Every other job I've had not only paid me, but did so on time. If I could redo the past, I would have quit well before the threats began and before things spiraled out of control. But of course, hindsight is 20/20, and it's great at showing you where you went wrong and how to avoid making the same mistakes in the future. In the jobs I've held since then, paydays become a source of anxiety. Each time I find myself thinking, what if I don't get paid? I check my account obsessively, and if my paycheck is late, I'm instantly transported back to that terrible experience, triggering panic attacks that make me physically ill. Although I've always eventually been paid, my trust in that company was shattered, and it has left me wary of any employer altogether. If I can offer you a piece of advice to prevent this from happening to you, it's this. Don't hesitate to report the issue like this to your local wage and hour equivalent. Put pressure on the company to rectify the situation, but do it in a much better way than I chose to. Another piece of advice: know your worth and never settle for less than you deserve. From my experience, it's clear that I didn't respect me. I would have never subjected myself to such treatment, and I would be in a much better position today if I had just declined the job altogether. Never lose sight of your own value, and I sincerely hope you all prosper in life. I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to each of you. Your support means the world to me, and I truly appreciate every single one of you who have subscribed to my channel. I understand that many of you are eager for more work history videos, and I'm excited to announce this call to action. If this upcoming video outperforms my current content, I'll commit to continuing this series alongside the other projects. With 682 subscribers, I know that at least 667 of you joined for my work content. It would mean so much to me if at least half of you could watch this video, helping to keep this series alive until I've shared all my work stories. I want to clarify that this series stopped not because I wanted to abandon you or to stop the project altogether, but because I had covered everything I could and needed to shift my focus to create new content. Your understanding during this transition means everything, and I hope you all stick with me for the long haul as I navigate these changes. Thank you for your incredible support and understanding. I couldn't do this without you.